Good afternoon, everyone. I hope and pray that you're fine wherever you are. Welcome again to this session and our discussion of Kenya, Africa, and the globe. Today, I want to talk about something which has been bothering many, a question which cuts across all professions, a question that our founding fathers asked in their graves, a question that Pan-Africanists ask in their discussions and conferences, and a question which people who love Africa are asking. For young intellectuals like me, an unknown Pan-Africanist like me, and an individual who loves global cooperation and African progress, I am asking the same question. And my question is very simple. Who will save Africa? Who will save Africa? It is now close to 70 years since the first African country gained independence. And to Africans, independence meant a breakaway from colonialism. It meant a breakaway from colonial ties. To others, and to many Africans and others across the world, African independence meant sovereignty, Africa for Africa, and Africa under Africa. This was freedom and a big win for Africans. But 70 years down the line, I can see an Africa which is going back to be colonized again. You remember, many of our founding fathers predicted that if Africans were not careful, if Africans were not alert, then they could be colonized again. And the predictions of these our founding fathers are coming to pass. Today, Africa is colonized, I can say so. Many African countries have been recolonized. And world superpowers such as the United States, China, Russia have led voyages. They have led massive migrations into Africa with one primary goal: to colonize Africa. Africans have been colonized economically. Africans have been recolonized politically. Africans have been recolonized socially. And Africans have been recolonized technologically. I want to start with economic recolonization of Africa. When I talk about recolonization, I mean that Africa has been colonized the second time, as the colonizers predicted. Economic colonization of Africa comes in very simpler ways. I can imagine, I long for an African country that is free from the World Bank or IMF loans or debts. Today, in my country, Kenya, the debt ceiling, the debt level has reached trillions. My country, Kenya, owes the International Monetary Fund. My country, Kenya, owes the World Bank and other institutions which operate globally. Recently in my country, just some few years ago, China sponsored the construction of standard gauge railway, which is known as SGR. Upon the construction, the Chinese government offered to collect levies from this railway. My country Kenya, the government owes my country Kenya, the government of Kenya owes the Chinese government money to pay this. Kenya has to offset some of its infrastructures. I have just given an example of the SGR. Economic recolonization of Africa comes mainly in terms of loans. These colonizers, they give you loans. If you are unable to pay, they seize your infrastructures such as railways, ports, and the rest. This has happened in many African countries. Kenya is just one of the examples. Go to Zimbabwe, go to West African countries. They owe loans to these big superpowers: China, United States, United Kingdom. To me, these systematic loans is economic recolonization of Africa. Although China was not involved in the first colonization of Africa, China currently is leading the race for the recolonization of Africa, economically, socially. Currently, the lifestyles that Africans live, the languages that Africans speak, their traditions are purely adopted from the colonizers. I have seen many of my friends, I have seen many of my mates trying to adopt the American slang, the American language. To me, and I know many will agree with me, adopting a foreign language which you are not used to is social recolonization. Look at the dressing now. Many Africans try to dress like these influential, these powerful people, musicians from the United States, from China, from Russia, from the United Kingdom, England, anywhere in the world which is outside Africa. Africans have disregarded their dressing modes. Today, you will see many of our young women and girls almost walking naked on the streets. I don't mean the natural naked, but I mean wearing clothes that slightly conceal their nakedness. That is social recolonization for those who don't know, and for those who know but they can't acknowledge that. I want to inform them that dressing in a way to show that you are aligning yourself with the Western culture, that is social recolonization. I talk about food. Food might be classified in terms of social and economic, but today, across many African cities, across many African streets, people have adopted the Western cuisine People want to eat the foods that are eaten in those developed countries. They have totally neglected the African foods, African cuisine, in the name of saying that they are modernized. Africa has been recolonized socially. I have just mentioned a few. I have mentioned clothing. I have mentioned the language, and I have mentioned the cuisine that Africans have adopted. I go to healthcare. I will give a typical example of my country. When ministers, when members of parliament, the president, the deputy president, and other important businessmen in the country, when they fall sick, the first destination is always India. Another destination is always UAE, United Arab Emirates. Another destination is always Saudi Arabia. Another destination is always the United States. Others go to China. In many other countries, others fly to the United Kingdom. That is my country, Kenya. I also read about a given Nigerian president who was taken to Saudi Arabia when he was sick. What is happening in Africa? Why are these people running away from Africa? Is it that the treatment services in these Western countries, in these foreign countries, is more special than in Africa? Don't we have doctors in Africa? Don't we have nurses in Africa? And don't we have specialists in Africa? Africa trains doctors. Africa trains nurses. And Africa trains other medical healthcare providers across different professions. Some of these African doctors are trained in the United States. They are trained in the United Kingdom. They are trained in India, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and any other country where these African personalities seek treatment. If these people, these African doctors are trained from these countries, why don't Africans trust them? Africa has been recolonized in terms of healthcare. A president will find it very easy to fly to India for cancer treatment. The same president will find it very uneasy to seek treatment in Kenya, in Tanzania, in Uganda, in Somalia, South Africa, Burkina Faso, Libya, Chad. What is going on? African leaders, African personalities do not trust their health care. They doubt their doctors. They doubt the experience of their nurses, and they doubt the experience of healthcare providers across various hospitals in African countries. What is the essence of investing in healthcare if you don't trust the people working in those facilities? I ask my African leaders, what is the essence of investing in African healthcare if you don't trust the people working in those facilities? What is happening in Africa? Why are African leaders running away from our hospitals? Why are they running away from our doctors? Yet they say that they are investing in healthcare. Every 5 years they run around with vehicles, choppers, and the rest, emphasizing that they will invest in healthcare. If they invest in healthcare, they trust these services provided. Why don't they seek care and treatment from these facilities? That shows clearly that China, Africa, China, United States, United Kingdom, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and the rest, they have recolonized Africa in terms of healthcare. I go to politics. Politics is the engine of any country. In fact, social, economic, technological rely on politics. The political system, governance structure, administration. I believe that African politics has also been recolonized. The Western world and foreign interests have captured African politics. It is very common today to hear African leaders, African governments stressing their political ties with foreign governments. And in most cases, these African leaders and African governments make their political decisions based on the conditions that the foreigners provide. African governments and African presidents believe that only by dancing to the tunes of these foreigners, that is when they will secure loans. That is when they will secure aid and grants. African presidents are very ready and willing to betray their citizens, to betray their governments, and to betray their, let me say, what should I call it? To betray their commitments to the public in exchange for goodies from these foreign governments. Recently, I read about the case of, was it Burkina Faso, Mali? Mali decided to break ties with Belgium because they believed that this foreign government was not helping them politically. They broke ties with Belgium and sought a new alliance with Russia through Wagner Group. And they believed that Wagner Group would help solidify the country politically and militarily. I saw a case in my country, Kenya, when a high-ranking United States government official arrived in my country, held talks with the president, held talks with the deputy presidents, and held talks with different cabinet secretaries and ministries. A few days later, around 3 days later, the Supreme Court of my country ruled in favor of homosexuality. To me, things in politics do not happen in out of mere coincidence. Things happening in politics are always well planned and well executed. the presence of the high-ranking US official in my country. And then a few days later, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of homosexuality in the country were connected. And I also noted that a few days later after the ruling, my country was given financial aid from the United States. Now you can see the connections. The leaders are capable of betraying the citizens, the public. They are capable of making serious political decisions with significant implications on the people. Why? To impress the West, to impress the foreigners, and to secure financial aid. Today, many African governments, many African presidents believe that they can stay in power, they can win elections only if they obtain support from foreign governments. That is a reality in Africa. Technologically, African countries are captured. They are captured technologically. I want to courageously say that all the technology gadgets that I am using are outside Kenya and outside Africa, to be specific. The smartphone that I am using is not made in Kenya and it is not made in Africa. The computer that I am using is not made in Kenya and not made in Africa. And I believe that all the smartphones that are used in my country are not made in Kenya and they are not made in Africa. Where are these smartphones made? Many of them come from China. Is this not technological recolonization? Is Africa incapable of producing their smartphones? Is Africa incapable of establishing their own industries to make these gadgets? I can see Africa has a very big problem to solve. Africa has a very serious problem to solve. And I believe that if Africa is not careful, as the founding fathers said, then they will be recolonized again. I accessed many of the speeches, many of the statements of our founding fathers, and some of them were talking about the current recolonization of Africa. They predicted that at some point in the history of Africa, Africa would be recolonized only if and only if African leaders were not careful. And that dream has come true. I just want to refer you to, yes, from the statements that I have given, I have shown Africa and the world and Kenya that Africa has been recolonized. That is, there is no doubt in that. We have been recolonized from the way we dress, the way we think, how we work, how we communicate, how we engage with our governments, the decisions that our governments make, healthcare, food, everything. We are trying to behave like the West. We are trying to behave like foreigners. and I can say that we are not Africans anymore. I think we need to revive the spirit of Africanism. We have to revive the spirit of Africa. Being African is, I can say, is a valuable resource. I am a Luo from Kenya. I am a Luo from Kenya. And for us, we believe that being a Luo is a lifestyle. It has some sense of pride. That is the same agitation that I am giving for Africans. Being an African should be some source of pride. It should make you feel as superior, important. Not that you devalue others, you belittle others, but you feel superior, not inferior. I want to refer to a very important statement that was made by His Excellency Alhaji Abubakar Tafawa Balewa. That was the Prime Minister of the Federation of Nigeria during the 1963 OAU summit in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. That was presidented, chaired by His Excellency Emperor Haile Selassie of Ethiopia. Alhaji Abubakar Tafawa Balewa warned Africans. He predicted that a time will come when Africa will be recolonized. And he emphasized that if African leaders were not careful, then this recolonization of Africa would come to pass. Tafawa Balewa said, colonialism can take many different forms. Our countries can be colonized economically if we are not careful. Even when I leave the speech there, Tafawa Balewa is telling Africans, he was warning Africans, and he was encouraging Africans. Colonialism was one of the key factors that these founding fathers fought against. They were agitating for African unity just for the sole reason of depriving Africa of colonialism, weeding out colonialism from Africa. And these founding fathers, with Tafawa Balewa among them, predicted that if Africans were never careful, then recolonization was to take shape. And in this speech, Tafawa Balewa said colonialism can take many different forms. Our countries can be colonized economically if we are not careful. Just as we have fought political domination, it is also important that we fight against economic domination by other countries. I long for a day when Africans will follow the guidelines of these founding fathers. I long for a day that Africans would be careful in their engagements with the West. And I long for a day when Africa will be back to its roots. Africa is the center of the earth. No doubt about that. Africa is the heart of the world. No doubt about that. And Africa is a resource-rich region, a resource-rich continent. And I believe Africa has the potential of serving the whole world. We Africans, we must ask ourselves the question, why are these foreigners coming to us? Why do they like us? I want to answer that question, and I want to tell Africans that these foreigners like us because we are rich, we are precious. We are very precious. The United States likes us, China likes us because we are very rich. but Africans have downgraded themselves. Africans have descended to the let me say the column, the category of beggars. How can a resource-rich region descend to the category of beggars? If these foreigners come to us for resources, if they like us this way, it means that Africans have not, and I predict that they will not recognize and acknowledge their worth. I want to remind my African friends, my African brothers and sisters, that Africa is very precious. That is why even the colonizers, they named Africa Ha. For those who have studied history, for those who did history in high school and at some point in university or college, you will be told that Africa was regarded as Ha. Ha is a term which is associated with female, and we all know that under normal circumstances, men will be attracted to women. That is the natural order of things. Men will be attracted to women. I recognize these foreign countries. I recognize China. I recognize the United States, the United Kingdom, Russia, and other global superpowers as male parties. I recognize them as men. And these men are attracted to a very beautiful girl known as Africa. Winning the heart of a girl it takes time and it takes process. Under normal circumstances, a man who approaches a woman, a girl, for the first time, and then the answer is yes, that man would conclude that that woman or that girl is a slut. Sorry to say so. In our country, in my country, Kenya, we call it easygoing. But a man would feel very important, very disturbed when he approaches a girl, a lady, and then the response would be no, even for several months. That is the worth of a woman. That is the worth of Africa. In the current situation, these men, led by the United States, China, Russia, Belgium, the United Kingdom, they came to this beautiful girl, Africa, and they asked Africa for a romantic relationship. On the first day of their meeting between these male foreigners and Africa, the first response that Africa gave to these male suitors was yes. These male suitors concluded that Africa was easygoing. Africa could be dominated easily. That is my conclusion of the connection between Africa and the foreigners. It will be very different if the United States, China, Russia, and the rest came to Africa, requested for a romantic relationship, and Africa's answer was no. It would be very different now. But we are in the current quagmire because Africa was approached by the male friends, male suitors, and Africa's response was yes. And these male suitors concluded that Africa was easygoing and Africa could be twisted very easily. Africa needs to recognize its worth, and Africans need to recognize their worth. Africa is a very beautiful girl, that attracts men from all over the world. Africa has attracted the attention of men from all over the world. And when these men come to seek Africa's hand in marriage, then I think Africa should make very critical decisions. Africa should say no at first. Saying no to these male suitors means that Africa is living the dream of the founding fathers. Africa is fulfilling the demands of our founding fathers. Our founding fathers emphasized the need for African unity. They believed that African progress and African success would be based on unity. The United States is successful because of the United States itself. It is a union between states. Why can't we have Africa, United States of Africa? Why can't we have United States of Africa? I want to encourage my Africans, my fellow Africans, that we have been recolonized. No doubt about that. We have been recolonized. And the only way to decolonize ourselves, we must be united. African unity is a must. Remember, our founding fathers noted that Africa would only be successful if it is united. They believed that Africa's success lies in unity. His Excellency Julius Kabarege Nyerere, that was the president of Tanzania, warned Africans, and he gave serious guidelines for African leaders to follow to ensure that Africa was united and Africa was free. Julius Kabarege Nyerere said, and I quote, "We can no longer go on saying that Angola is not free or Mozambique is not free, and that we are helping Angolans or Mozambicans to free themselves. Such statements are hiding the truth. The real humiliating truth is that Africa is not free, and therefore it is Africa we should take the necessary collective measures to free Africa. It is Africa which should take the necessary collective measures to free Africa." This is the clear and serious message that should go from here to the Security Council of the United States, United Nations. In my previous video, I said that African problems can only be solved by Africans and Africa. Our problems as Africans, we are the ones to solve them. We can never wait for the United States to solve our problems. In fact, when they come, as I stated, they come to fulfill their national interests. See what is happening in DR Congo today. Innocent lives are being lost. Many people, in terms of millions, are being displaced from their homes. Children are dying. And yet, the United States is present in that country. China is present in that country. The United Nations is present in that country. African Union is present in that country. I want to urge African presidents, and I want to urge the political class. African solutions must be created. We must stamp up efforts to solve African problems. Never invite foreigners to solve African problems. And I say again, never invite foreigners to solve African problems. We have the capability as Africans, we have the potential as Africans to solve our own problems. And I want my members to remember this statement, that the real humiliating truth is that Africa is not free, and therefore it is Africa we should take the necessary collective measures to free Africa. Collective measures demands unity. African unity first, then we forge strategies for solving Africa's problems. And with that, I believe the recolonization of Africa will be overturned. Thank you, and share your thoughts, your views, and most importantly, subscribe to this platform. Thank you.